Hey, folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. Happy Friday. Man, it's been a long few weeks for me. I don't know about you, but this new year's been off to a bit of a frenetic start. I say that in a good way, bouncing around, doing some travel. Mar-a-Lago, Washington, D.C., a speech in Tulsa, Oklahoma last weekend. I can breathe a little bit this weekend, but before I do that, we got to give you an update on what's happening in the world's most volatile and chaotic region and why it impacts you no matter where you live. And I say that for a reason because we've got viewers from literally the four corners of the earth joining us right now here on YouTube. What a blessing that we're able to do this, able to reach a global audience for such a time as this. So let's dig into it. Speaking of global, Iran's foreign minister with some very pointed remarks, we'll say, today towards the United States, towards the Trump administration. He did not name Donald Trump by name, but clear who he was talking about. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Arghachi, I have to brush up on my Persian, has told Al Jazeera that any attack by Israel or the United States on Iran's nuclear facilities would plunge the region into, quote, an all-out war. Here's more of what he said, Iran's foreign minister, in an interview with Al Jazeera, which is a mouthpiece for jihad, as you may know. He warned that launching a military attack, if the U.S. were to launch a military attack on Iran's nuclear facilities, it would be, quote, one of the biggest historical mistakes the United States could make. He went on to say that Iran would respond immediately and decisively to any attack, and that it would lead to an all-out war in the region. And this article goes on to say, concerns have grown in Iran that U.S. President Donald Trump might empower Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to attack Iran's nuclear sites while further tightening U.S. sanctions during his second term in office. And this Iranian foreign minister, Arghachi, also met with, surprise, surprise, Hamas officials in Qatar. And he said the Israeli occupation forces couldn't defeat Hamas. The resistance lives on, et cetera, et cetera. That's no surprise. And you may say as well, Iran threatening all-out war against the United States. That's no surprise either. Agreed. Although there's a few distinct differences that make this very worthy of discussing here with you today. Number one, Donald Trump just took office 11 days ago. And as I just pointed out, Iran fully expects the maximum pressure campaign to commence. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, Michael Waltz, National Security Advisor, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, all the way up the chain to Donald Trump himself. These are people who fully, Elise Stefanik at the UN, these are people who fully understand the depth of the Iranian threat, in particular, the Iran nuclear threat. So number one, Iran's trying to deliver a shot across the bow, so to speak, as Donald Trump takes office and say, don't even think about it. Which brings us to the second point, why this is relevant. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. We've got a very active chat. Feel free to weigh in. Is this more bark than bite, folks? And I ask you that because let's get serious. They're yapping and barking. It's like a little Yorkshire Terrier yapping at a big old pit bull. I mean, Iran right now, we've been detailing this for months. The Iranian regime, with all this big talk that you just heard from its foreign minister, one of the top officials in that regime, threatening all-out war, immediate and decisive response against the United States and all the rest. Hey, this regime is more vulnerable than it's ever been in the 46 years of its miserable, wicked existence. Do I have to repeat it? What we've been talking about here in the live stream for months now. Number one, Iran's ring of fire, the terror proxies that surround Israel on all sides, they've been smashed. Yes, they still pose a threat, but nothing like they were. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iraqi militias, the Houthis, Assad in Syria, he's gone. He's in exile in Moscow. So that ring of fire, which was Iran's great deterrent, it's a smoldering heap of ruins, largely. That's number one. Number two, Iran's air defenses have been destroyed. And they weren't that very they weren't very strong to begin with. But on October 26th, Israel, in a counterattack, a response to an Iranian attack a few weeks before against Israel, Israel responded by destroying Iran's air defenses. They also destroyed a top secret Iranian nuclear research facility in that strike. But folks, add it up. The Ring of Fire severely, severely weakened, no longer able to mount any sort of massive rocket barrages or coordinated barrages against Israel. Those days are done. That's number one. Number two, they have no air defenses. I joked around the other day. There's a show on one of these networks, TLC, Discovery Channel, one of them, I don't know, called Naked and Afraid. I've never watched it, thankfully. But I can tell you that the Iranian regime right now, when it comes to its air defenses and its deterrent factor, is most certainly naked and afraid. They're completely exposed. And Israel or the U.S. right now has a clear path to those nuclear facilities. So the poll question, is it bark or bite? I'm saying bark. And there's not a lot of potential to deliver much bite if you're Iran. So these statements today threatening all-out war, we've heard it before, but relevant. A, Donald Trump in office now. New sheriff in town. B, Iran is saying all of this from a position of weakness. They have no leverage. Folks, when Iran would bluster like this in the past, you could say, wow, okay. They wield this spider's web, this lethal network of proxies, armed to the teeth with rockets, missiles, attack drones, tear tunnels, tens of thousands of well-trained jihadi foot soldiers. It's a formidable force. There was some bite behind that. There was some teeth behind those threats before. Not that Iran was a 800-pound gorilla. I mean, they still would have been smashed. But when they talked tough, at least there was a little something there to back it up, a little something. Still would have been smashed in short order, as we saw Israel do after October 7th. But now they're speaking and they're spouting off from a complete position of weakness. And that's point B. Point C. Just today, I interviewed my good friend, Elliot Chodoff. Now, he is a reserve major in the Israel Defense Forces. He was here in studio with me downstairs just a few hours ago, filming an episode of my nightly show, Stakelbeck Tonight, seen every weeknight, Monday through Friday, on TBN, the Trinity Broadcast Network, the world's largest Christian television network. If you like the live stream, you'll love our nightly show every Monday through Friday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with a re-air every night, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And Elliot made a great point today. Again, IDF Reserve Major, knows his stuff. You've seen him with me many times in Israel and on this side of the pond as well. He said, look, Eric, they're threatening all-out war. Here's the dirty little secret. Iran is already at war with the United States. He said, I would argue that the Iranian regime has been at war with the United States dating back to 1979, the birth, the black day that the Iranian regime was birthed, and Ayatollah Khomeini returned from exile in France, took the reins, drove that country into the ground. In 1979, the Iranian regime seized the U.S. embassy, dozens of hostages. That was our introduction to this wicked regime. After that, fast forward to 1983, Iran engineered the Marine barracks bombing in Beirut, killing 241 or 243, I believe, U.S. Marines. That was Iran. Take it through the years. Iran killing U.S. soldiers in Iraq. Iran hatching plots on U.S. soil to assassinate U.S. officials, including President Trump. The list goes on. And Elliot made the point, look, Iran has been at war with the United States. It's just been a somewhat one-sided war over the years. That is until around 2020. Donald Trump, in the last year of his first term, took out Qasem Soleimani. Well, let's take it even before that. He eliminated terror master Qasem Soleimani. the Iranian terror master, of course, the world's most dangerous terrorist, bar none. And even before that, in his first term, Trump pulled out of that disastrous Iran nuclear deal. He designated Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, the IRGC, as a terrorist organization, and rightly so. He moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. He declared Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, shot after shot against the Iranian regime. Oh, and by the way, he clamped massive sanctions on the regime. So Donald Trump was the first one really to fight back. And all of a sudden, it wasn't a one-sided war, a one-sided Iranian jihad against the great Satan, as they call it, the United States. No, it was America using all sorts of levers of power, kinetic and otherwise, to strike back and strike back hard. But folks, make no mistake about it. This is a war. It's not always a shooting war, but it's certainly an ideological war, a war of ideas, a civilizational struggle. And I thought it was a great point by my good friend Elliot Chodoff. Again, you can watch our interview tonight on Stakelbeck tonight. That's 7:30 Eastern, re-air 10:30 Eastern on TBN. So that's where we're at right now. And the Trump administration's watching all this very closely. And Donald Trump, number one, look, he's a guy who seems to have a long memory to me. And it wasn't too long ago in the past few months that Iran was plotting his demise, assassination plots. And he has said, look, Iran's nuclear program, it's a non-starter. And unlike Joe Biden, when Trump says it, he actually means it. He's a man of action. Now he's meeting early next week, I believe February 4th, Tuesday, with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in D.C. Bibi will be the first foreign leader to visit the United States. And I can tell you, Iran's at the top of the list, Iran's nuclear program. They're threatening all-out war, folks. It's bluster. Iran still has certainly military capabilities, but they're desperate right now. And now when they made these threats before, they were able to leverage that and essentially blackmail, extortion with Obama and Biden, where the leader of the free world, the most powerful nation in the world, the United States, was kowtowing to a tin pot dictatorship in the form of the Iranian regime, not the Iranian people who we love, great civilization dating back thousands of years, ancient Persia, a Bible land, by the way, Mordecai, Esther, Darius, Cyrus, and to encourage you, home to the world's fastest growing church, the Iranian church, largely underground, under fear of persecution. They continue to grow and thrive because you cannot stop the gospel. So that should encourage you. But Trump and Bibi, I think, have some things up their sleeve when it comes to Iran. Iran knows that. The timing of this statement is not a coincidence. Bibi in D.C. in a few days. You think Iran's not watching this, biting its fingernails down to the nubs? Of course they are. And again, I use the phrase, a shot across the bow. That's what Iran's trying to deliver right now in advance of this U.S.-Israel meeting. Now, I've said all along, this is the year of reckoning for Iran's nuclear program. We will know if Iran will be a nuclear power or if Iran's nuclear program will be destroyed, or at least mostly destroyed, by a U.S. strike or a strike with the U.S. working in tandem with Trump. In the very least, Trump would give them the green light, I believe, would give Israel the green light. But this is the year of reckoning. Expect more rhetoric like this, and we're watching that meeting next week very, very closely. Folks, needless to say, this is a time where Israel, when we talk about Iran and its proxies, has been locked in an existential struggle over the past 16 months now, since October 7th, 2023. That's where our partner today comes in, our partner for the live stream, our dear friends at ARTSA. Now, if you've been following me way back on this YouTube channel from the very beginnings, ARTSA has been our loyal partner from the beginning. It's artsabox.com. And look, we talk about supporting Israel, right? I'm in America. What can I do? I've never even been to Israel, you might say. Well, one great way to do that in a time of such need in Israel, where the economy is struggling, the tourism industry is shut down, essentially, because of constant war these past 16 months on multiple fronts. One way to help Israel right now in a tangible way, no matter where you are in the world, is to bless Israel financially, economically. And how can you do that? Partnering with Israeli small businesses, supporting Israeli small businesses and entrepreneurs and artisans. That's where Artza comes in. Artza brings the scriptures to life. That's the best way I can put it. All in these beautiful boxes filled with well-crafted, incredible products, handcrafted from Israeli artisans. All of it is made in the Holy Land. The sights, the sounds, the smells, the taste of Israel, all collected in this one beautiful box. Folks, this is no shoebox, okay? This is high quality material, chock full of great products made by Israeli artisans across Israel, from Jerusalem to the Galilee to the Negev and beyond. Every month, there's a new feature, a new region of Israel, a new theme featured in these Artza boxes. And in 2025, look, I've got the list right here that my good friends at Artza just sent along. Listen to this. This year, Artza is offering 4 different boxes. Number 1, the Genesis box. It's a celebration of creation and new beginnings. The Land of Milk and Honey box, a taste of Israel's natural bounty and promise. The Tikva, Hope box, symbols of hope and renewal. Then, of course, their famous Christmas box. Every year, Artza does a great Christmas box filled with products from Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Nazareth, and beyond. It's artzabox.com. Use the discount code Watchman. That's MAN, Watchman, for a 10% discount off your Artza box subscription. And then you will have a taste of the Holy Land delivered right to your doorstep. Next best thing to getting to Israel is an Artza box. And the great thing is you're fulfilling the biblical mandate to bless Israel for such a time as this, in Israel's time of greatest need. And you're propping up, you're supporting, you're blessing Israel's economy. So it's a win-win. Artzabox.com, 10% discount for the Israel lover in your life. Use that discount code Watchman. Check it out. We love Artza and support all of their great products. And when we do that, we're supporting God's land and God's people. Again, it's a win-win. Speaking of win-win, the opposite of that, I say, would be a lose-lose. And we had that this week in Ankara, Turkey, when Recep Erdogan, a Muslim Brotherhood radical, met with Hamas, which is a notorious, vicious, bloodthirsty jihadist organization, which, by the way, this isn't mentioned enough. Hamas is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. That's right. Hamas is the self-described Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. Surprise, surprise. And it's interesting. Erdogan's out of that Muslim Brotherhood mold. He's the more traditional version. I've interviewed Muslim Brotherhood leaders in Europe and the US throughout the years. And hey, they wear a suit and a tie. They are eloquent, well-spoken, Western educated. They don't look radical. They may not even sound radical, but oh, they are radical. And Erdogan, look, he came to power through the ballot box. That's the Brotherhood strategy. The Muslim Brotherhood usually comes to power, or at least tries to, through the ballot box. And then they get stronger and stronger. And then the final stage of the Brotherhood's tiered strategy is violent jihad. Impose your will upon a population by force. That's the end game. But it doesn't start like that. They're very stealthy. And they'll ingratiate themselves in the media, in politics, in the universities, influencers. That's how the Brotherhood gets its claws in. And that's what happened in Turkey through Erdogan. And now look, it's been a 23-year long march for Recep Erdogan. And now he has practically total power in that country. He's purged the military, intel services, police, every chance he could get. And now he's feeling very good about himself because he is the main power broker right now in Syria. And his jihadi allies are now essentially running Syria. And he is a steadfast, stalwart supporter of Hamas, always has been. And this week, and mind you, here's the big takeaway. Erdogan's a radical guy, radical Islamist. Again, he's not someone this isn't ISIS or Al-Qaeda. Now, he envisions the same end game. They share the same end game. the return of that Islamic caliphate, that union of all Islamic nations ruled by one leader, the caliph, the leader of the caliphate. Erdogan fancies himself as a modern day caliph. And remember, the last caliphate was the Ottoman Caliphate. What was the seat of the Ottoman Empire? You guessed it, Turkey. Erdogan wants to bring back the glory days of the Ottoman Empire in 2025 and beyond. But all that said, he's also still a member of NATO. Folks, reminder, Turkey is a NATO member nation. It's got the second largest military in all of NATO, and it's helmed by a radical Islamist from the Muslim Brotherhood school of thought. Not a pleasant thought. And you know my catchphrase when it comes to Turkey under Erdogan, Nino, NATO in name only, not the Turkish people, but this government. It's a big problem. And he hosted a Hamas delegation this week in Ankara. Hamas's intelligence chief and also Khaled Mashal was there, one of the former top leaders. A huge Hamas delegation, huge, 10 people, a big delegation, but huge in that most of Hamas's leadership is dead. In the wake of October 7th, Israel eliminated them. So it's a pretty big deal when a bunch of them are gathered in one place in Ankara, meeting with the leader of a NATO member nation. Folks, I repeat, meeting with the leader, a vicious designated terror organization is meeting with the leadership of a NATO member nation. Where is NATO on this? Every NATO member nation should be castigating Erdogan. And this meeting kind of slipped under the radar screen a little bit, but still, where has NATO been throughout? I mean, throughout the past 23 years of increased radicalism, not only statements, but threats and activity by Erdogan, threatening Israel, threatening to invade Israel, threatening to conquer Jerusalem. He's really done all this. We've documented it here on the channel. It's madness. And NATO has been mum. Let's see what Donald Trump does. The U.S. is the biggest power broker in NATO, of course. He wants NATO to pull its weight. Let's see if Erdogan, if he continues with this nonsense, especially in Syria, watch how that plays out, folks, because collision course type situation, because if Turkish troops moved into Syria, they'd be at Israel's doorstep. And there are Turkish troops in northern Syria right now, and there have been. But if he gets delusions of grandeur and he wants to get in Syria and sink his claws into Syria in a major way, does Erdogan, then things get very interesting and very, shall we say, tense. Remember, Iran, Assad's gone. Iran's out of Syria. Hezbollah's out of Syria. Russia, they still have the bases in Tartus on the Mediterranean coast. But Russia's influence is a bit blunted in Syria right now as well, obviously. Erdogan sees an opportunity. He senses a vacuum. He wants to fill it in Syria. So Israel may have just swapped one enemy for another at its northern doorstep in Syria. And I believe it has prophetic implications. We've talked about it a bunch. The war of Gog and Magog, laid out in the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39. Funny name, I know. Read it. It's very important to future events. We can go around and around, but every prophecy scholar is pretty certain that Iran and Turkey are absolutely part of this latter days. That's what Ezekiel calls it, a latter days confederation of nations that come against Israel. And guess what? Many believe Russia is in there too. And it would make a lot of sense because those three nations, Russia, Turkey, and Iran, are getting very cozy these days, even though they are geopolitical rivals. That's the interesting thing. But they come together when they have a common purpose. And that common purpose increasingly has been their shared opposition to Israel. So these prophetic chess pieces are moving on the board. I laid out two big ones today, Iran and Turkey, what's happening there. I think the Trump effect, Trump's return to office factors into all of this. Fasten your seatbelts. I've been saying it, folks. 2025, we're 1 month down already, right? Tomorrow's February 1st. 2025 is going to be a very eventful year in the world's most eventful and prophetic region. So keep it right here. If anything breaks over the weekend, we will come to you here. So be sure to subscribe, click the notification bell so you get alerts if we come to you live. Whenever we come to you next, until then, have a great weekend. God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.